Call Don right now, 682-1270.
News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. And in studio now we have Senator Michael VonFlatern. You're the chairman of the Transportation Committee in the State Senate, right?
In the State Senate, exactly.
Right. Okay, so I figured I'd have you in here. We've been talking the last week or so about the fuel tax increase that took effect July 1st. And I figured I'd get you in here and we'll start off with that, and maybe we'll branch out into some other things as well. But could you just give us a little bit of an idea of how this came about in the first place? I mean, how you guys decided that you did need to do something to raise revenue?
Well, back in 98 was the last time we raised a fuel tax, and it was 5 cents back then. We raised it 9 cents. Brought you to 14 cents per gallon. That's not a percentage. That's actually 14 cents. So if gasoline cost $1 back then, costs $3 today, you're still paying 14 cents. If they could have passed it, I think they would have gone with a percentage idea. So as fuel went up, you got a little more fuel tax. Well, as everybody knows, the cost of repairing your roads today, if anybody looks at their pay stub from 1998 and looks at it in 2013, or looks at the price of a barrel of road oil or the gravel that goes in the base, in 1998 you were paying X. Today you're paying X times 4. So the price of maintaining our roads has gone up exponentially. It's beaten all the Wyoming cost of living inflation gauges that have been used. It is probably in the area of 3 times the cost of living. So you do that, you say, well, we're still collecting that 14 cents. We're getting behind. And anybody that's driven Highway 59 prior to passing lanes, those that went to the mines every morning or worked in the oil fields out there, or just the right to Gillette commuters, without those passing lanes, that was a horrific little road. The passing lanes aren't the total answer, but they're certainly a better answer. They every once in a while you get a workover rig, something doing 45 miles an hour, backs up traffic at 6:37 in the morning, backs it up for 2 or 3 miles. People start getting a little crazy. You're setting yourself up for some massive wrecks. You have a passing lane coming up, workover rig gets in that right lane, everybody gets by them in the time of the passing lane, and you're back to your 65 miles an hour. So everybody understands the value of good roads and expanded roads, but we couldn't keep up. So the WYDOT, the Wyoming Department of Transportation, went into a maintain mode instead of improvements like 59 and the future of 4 lanes all the way to right. That all went out of their plans. What we were left with was, let's keep the pavement good, stripe it now and again, and that's the end of it. So we came up with it. They need 135 million more every year, and we came up with roughly for the Wyoming Department of Transportation about 45 million. The difference in this fuel tax, this fuel 10 cents will gain about 78, 79, 77 million, somewhere in that zone, of which a third of it goes to cities and counties. So our state only has about an additional $45 million, of which they said they need 135 a year to keep our roads up and to improve them as they go, turning lanes, passing lanes. Hopefully someday Gillette to right with a 4-lane. So that's what the basis for starting this discussion 5 or 6 years ago about possibly raising it. And finally this session we did pass it.
And so you've been trying this for quite a while then.
Oh, yes. I've been working on other funding, and I was trying to go through our federal mineral royalties, our severance tax, some stream that would come off there to be predictable to WYDOT. And unfortunately, we started in 2005 giving them some general fund money, and then it went on from there.
Okay, and looks like we have a call, so let's go to the phones and might have a question here. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. You're on the air.
Yes, my comment is on these, you don't have to go very far to see waste. I mean, 6 people to change a stop sign, 4 people to mow the lawn, I mean, the right-of-ways, $90 million baseball parks, bicycle paths that bicyclists don't use. And, I mean, we build this, And, I mean, you don't have to go very far to see waste. And this idea that the fuel tax is a victimless tax, the lodging tax is a victimless tax. If you've ever been in business, when their costs go up, it's passed on, like the fuel tax through the trucks who deliver the groceries to Gillette are going to be passed on. Those people will not take a loss, and if they can't spread that cost on, they'll go out of business or they'll find something else to do. And I think we need to get rid of these people that want to constantly, instead of balancing budgets and wasting money, I think we need to get rid of them and start voting no on these 1% sales taxes, these lodges, and make these counties and cities get their money, their budgets balanced. Just kind of a couple thoughts.
Okay, thanks for the call. It was kind of all over the place. I don't know what the Field of Dreams has to do with this.
Yeah, there were several good comments.
Yeah. I guess the main point was that raising fuel taxes will raise the rates of things that we buy at the store, and that's an excellent point to make.
Okay, and let me address a couple of things right off the bat. The idea of sidewalks or running paths or bicycle trails, almost all of that on the state system. Remember, there's state, city, county roads, but the state system, which is Highway 59 up through town, 1416 through town, those are all part of the state system. Those are almost all federally mandated. So the feds give us money every year, about $220 million, that goes to Wyoming Department of Transportation. And of that money, there is in there, X percent will be spent on interstates. Such and such percent will go to the state highway system, the federal highway road system, which is Highway 59 and 1416 and 191 and so forth around the state. And within that, you will spend X dollars on landscaping or sidewalks or whatever. So WYDOT tries to meet those requirements. So when they lay a new road down or rebuild Highway 59 like they did in town, it was mandated in there X amount will go to landscaping, will go to sidewalks. So not all of that on the state highway system. I cannot speak about your towns and counties. That's local control, and they decide what they want to do. But I can tell you that on the state roads, that is almost federally mandated, almost every bit of it, like the landscaping they're doing over on the west interchange on the Interstate 90 here in Gillette. So understand that that's in there. Cost of freight. Well, the way we justified this and discussed this whole fuel increase was that the distributor is paying at the rack. The rack being the point at which they load their tanker that is headed to your fuel station, to the convenience store to unload into their tanks where you pump it out into your cars. They were paying the same price at that rack at the refinery in most cases, or at the end of a pipeline from a refinery. They were paying the same price whether that truck was headed up to Hardin, Montana from the load out south of Sheridan, or it was coming down to Gillette or going to Buffalo, going to Sheridan. So if we're all paying the same price, why shouldn't it be 10 cents less when we didn't have this extra dime than when that load went to Montana? But it wasn't. Sometimes Hardin had cheaper fuel prices than Sheridan. But yet they paid the same price at the rack, which is where they assess all the taxes. Yet Montana had 25 or 26 cents more per gallon than had 12 to 14 cents more per gallon than Wyoming had. Yet they paid the same price at the rack. Sometimes fuel is even cheaper in Hardin, Montana than it was in Sheridan. So to say that it's going to go up and stay up there, somebody was already paying it already, and most of the time it was citizens of Wyoming. And what we weren't getting was reaping the benefit of that fuel tax because the broker, the jobber, was using that to decrease the price in other states.
Right, and that's because it's a regional market, because Wyoming's not big enough to have its own market. If this were New York or Florida or some big state like that, you might be able to kind of dictate the prices. But since it's a regional market, Wyoming was partially subsidizing fuel taxes in Montana and South Dakota.
Exactly. It's a hard concept to get your head around. You have to think about it for a while. But if it's all starts out at $1 at the rack and heads off to South Dakota, that should mean that he is losing 10 cents on every gallon, because the tax in South Dakota that the jobber pays to the state is 10 cents more than Wyoming. So that means he should only be getting 90 cents, where he drives over to Wyoming And he's now gained 10 cents because he paid that dollar, no matter where his trucks went. So Wyoming was paying that tax already without reaping the benefits of it coming back to the state.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that in the fact that the prices really haven't gone up yet.
Yes, and we expect that they will 3 or 4 cents when the market forces are what drive it, and the price of crude oil is what really drives it.
Right.
Right now, crude oil is at almost, well, it's not at an all-time high, but it's well over what it's been over the last year or so. It's $106, I think, for West Texas crude, which Wyoming producers get less than that, but it's somewhat close. And it was down in the 80s and 70s here just a year ago. So what you're seeing is that's driving the price, yet we haven't seen that big of an increase at the pumps. In fact, now that the refineries are all back online again with their seasonal changes and their maintenance work, prices are actually started down. So we'll see in the next couple months.
Yeah, so on that note, we'll take a short break. We'll come back, and I want to talk a little bit about how the process of passing the bill went through and everything. So stay tuned. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. We'll be right back.
Out of town and still want to listen?
Stream the show at DonCarpenterRadio.com.
Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270, KIML. Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270, KIML.
News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's 8:22, and if you're just tuning in, we have Senator VonFlatern, the chairman of the Transportation Committee in the State Senate. We've been talking about the fuel tax, and we'll get into a few other things that is going on down in Cheyenne in just a little bit, but okay. I just want to make sure Oh, okay. Okay. VonFlatern. Okay, it's a long A. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm terrible with names. I even had it written down. So where we left off, I wanted to talk a little bit about once you decided that raising the fuel tax was the best way to raise the funds needed for the highways. What was the process like?
Well, when you have to decide all tax raising, all revenue raising or decreasing bills have to start in the House of Representatives. So that was a no-brainer. It went to the House first. Then they have to decide which committee. Does it go to Transportation or does it go to the Revenue Committee? In this case, they chose the Revenue Committee. So it goes to the Revenue Committee. They have a hearing during session. Well, let me back up. Prior to that, during the interim between this previous session of 2012 and the session of 2013, they met as what they called a super committee, which was the Transportation and Revenue Committees met together and discussed this whole thing and voted, and it passed out of there to be a committee bill sponsored by the Revenue Committee. So then it comes up in the House during session. It is sent to the Revenue Committee. They hold public hearings. They hear from both sides, the opposing, the supporting side. They take a vote there. It comes out of the Revenue Committee with a positive vote. At least out of the 9 people, at least 5 voted for it. I don't remember exactly how many. Goes to the floor. It goes into the floor on Committee of the Whole. The first reading, basically, of the bill gets explained, debated up and down, lots of debate. There's no time limits on Committee of the Whole, so it went on for quite a while. Gets a favorable pass vote done on voice vote. So it goes on to second reading. Second reading, same debate, but not nearly as long. It's also timed. It restricts the whole thing. Gets a positive voice vote again. Moves on to third reading. Third reading in the House, same thing, up and down debate, but once again timed and limited, and then passes on a roll call vote, and where they actually name every person. They have to stand up and say, or from their desk have to say aye or no, yay or nay. And it passes. So then it comes over to the Senate, goes through the whole same process again. It goes to the Senate, in our case, went to the Senate Transportation Committee instead of the Revenue Committee. There's only 5 members on each Senate committee, have a public hearing again, much less discussion because they kind of said everything they needed to do in the House committee, so we had less discussion. It still took a little over an hour and a half to do that bill in committee. Passed out of committee 4-1. Went to the floor, the same thing, first reading, second reading, third reading, and it passed out of the Senate. I believe it was 1713.
Actually, I think it was 1812.
1812.
Yeah, okay. So it was you were pretty close.
Yeah,
It was a fairly close vote.
It was. 1812 is not that close, but, when you only have 30 votes, you move 3 in any direction in that case, and it would have flunked. It would have failed. 1515, a tie bill fails. But it passed 1812, and it was pretty consistent through the voting for 3 readings. And then it went to the governor's desk. The governor signed it. It became law as effective July 1st.
Now, since I've reached out to a few people that, I looked at the roll call vote, and I reached out to a few people that did vote against it, and I haven't gotten any response. How familiar are you with the argument, the alternative argument that was offered?
Well, interesting thing was, for about 4 years, I had brought forth a bill to set up a tolling system on Interstate 80. 85% of the traffic that uses Interstate 80, 406 miles, depending on who you discuss with, 406 miles, 85% of that traffic does not originate or terminate in the state of Wyoming. We're a bridge state, they call us. We just pass through traffic. I-80 is a huge commercial route for the rest of the country. The Chicago, Long Beach, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, Kansas City, they all use I-80. But they don't stop here, nor do they originate here. So I said, fine, let's put a toll booth up. Electronic tolling, you just drive through, you don't hear a thing. You get a bill in the mail, just like they do E470 in Denver. Very simple. And then they're saying, oh, you're going to be picking on the commuters in Wyoming that drive like Rock Springs, Green River every day, or Rock Springs out to Rollins, Wamsut, or whatever. Those people would be. I said, fine. In my last attempt to get it passed through, I said, exempt all registered Wyoming registered vehicles. Just exempt them. And what we'll do, because you can't do this legally because you're discriminating, is we'd take a certain flow of money that came out of federal mineral royalties to the Department of Transportation, and for every time a Wyoming registered vehicle went through the toll booth and got dinged, that they would send money out of, they'd divert money out of that flow and put it into the toll flow. So basically we're taking out of one pocket and put it in the other, because some of that money does go to the roads anyway. And that failed. In the Senate, transportation at that time, I was not on transportation that year, and it failed 2 to 3. Just because a couple of people did not believe in any taxes whatsoever. I said, we're exempting all Wyoming registered vehicles. We're catching 85% of the traffic that beats the heck out of our interstate, and we as a small population state have to take care of. Says, why shouldn't they be paying more than their 14 cents a gallon, which means we get $12 or $16 out of a heavy truck driving across our whole state? Why shouldn't we get some more money to take care of that road? And we're going to expand the road, straighten out some curves, put some passing lanes in where they don't exist today. There was a myriad of improvements to be done under this toll system, and they were kind of outlined in the bill, and anyway, it was shot down. So what the interesting thing was, they brought that up as an alternative.
Oh, so that was
fuel
one.
Tax.
That was one.
No, let's go ahead and toll I-80. That's a beautiful idea. Said you're a little late because the federal program went away. We couldn't toll it because it was under a pilot program the state had put together the feds had allowed about 8 years ago, extended it about 4 years beyond when it should have ended because they could never pass another highway authorization for funding, and this year they ended it. So I mean, when I lived in Pennsylvania, I remember they've been trying to toll I-80 through Pennsylvania for years. It's kind of the same deal. A lot of the traffic going across 80 in Pennsylvania, and the northern part of the state doesn't really stop in Pennsylvania. It's going from New York to somewhere else, or from New Jersey. Exactly.
So it's kind of the same deal, but it's even more of an issue here. Let's go to the phones. I think we might have a question here. News Talk 1270 KIML. You're on the air.
Hello, Don, Mr. Flatern. One of the things, I was one of those people that are against your I-80 toll. And one of the things I look at, because I was a professional driver, yes, you do have the tolls up there in Pennsylvania, Don, and guess what we used to do? We used to bypass them.
Oh yeah, I remember many a day as a driver bypassing the Ohio Turnpike before they finally got smart and cut the tolls in half and raised the speed limit.
Exactly. You're not really you're hurting the drivers more than anything, because a lot of your independent drivers, or even the drivers who are driving for a company, what they're doing is they're going to go around your toll because they really don't need to be there, and spend that money on toll when they could use it for something else. And I bet you most of them trucks you say are just rolling through the state. They're stopping at either Cheyenne, Laramie, either Rock Springs, the towns like that, and they're probably spending quite a bit of money in diesel fuel and other things because they have to stop and get their fuel. And as for the taxes, I believe we do have to have taxes to take care of things, but I don't like giving the government excess taxes because they usually don't do what you're supposed to do with them. I'll let you answer that. See you later, sir.
Yeah, and I think I think that might be one of the reasons why the idea to toll 80 probably failed in the first place. Is a lot of people had that kind of mindset, and as somebody that's driven around tolls before, I've certainly done my fair share of it. I don't know how easy that would be in Wyoming. I don't think it would be very easy to avoid 80 if you're going across the southern part of the state. At least not in a big truck.
Well, that's one of the interesting things. We were the easiest state to put a toll up because there wasn't a comparable 2-lane or 4-lane available for you to go onto. So we took this consultant did these algorithms that punched it into a computer, and you could take a truck leaving Long Beach and go to Chicago, or from Seattle and go to San Antonio, or whatever you wanted to do, and then they'd run the numbers saying if your toll was $5, $100, $500. At what point would that truck be a cheaper trip for him to go to Colorado, where the average speed is about 42 miles an hour for a truck on the I-70 because of the mountains?
Oh, yeah.
Versus
not fun.
60 or 58 or something miles per hour average speed across Wyoming. So at what point was his time and his fuel worth it? And we could get up to $150, $180 to cross the whole 410 miles, 407 miles of I-80 and be cheaper than him going any other route. So that was one consideration. The other was, within the bill, there was an economic impact allocation from the tolls that would have gone to anybody that saw a reduction in business, which would have been a guy that changes tires in Rollins on tractor trailers. He could, should there be less trucks, see a drop in business, and that would be the correlation that would trigger it in his application. We're seeing X less trucks, and my business is down this, and so there would be money given to, because we cannot give it to private individuals, it would be given to the cities, towns, counties to offset those loss in income. That's about all we could do there. The thing was that we didn't really see that offset, because you wouldn't have seen that offset, but you would have raised a lot of revenue to take care of I-80 and to make it a much safer road. As you know, it's shut down over a month a year, well over a month this last year, almost 2 months. Some section was shut down. And so all this money was to go to improve that road and keep it from shutting down. One day of not shutting down that road is worth several $100s per truck that sits idling while it waits for the road to open up. If you don't shut it down an extra week or two because you've made these improvements, snow fences, straightening out roads, possibly moving a couple lanes that shouldn't be where they are anyway because of the way the snow reacts to that road, that right there gave them all their money back that they would ever pay in tolls. And so, we had everything. I think we had everything covered, but it didn't happen.
Oh, and on that note, we'll take another short break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about this. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. We'll be right back.
He likes turtles too. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270, KIML. You're listening to Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Call Don right now, 682-1270.
News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Thanks for joining us this morning. And if you're just tuning in, we have Senator VonFlatern, got it right this time, in studio. We've been talking about the fuel tax bill and how it came about and how it got passed. And I understand you wanted to actually mention a few of the groups that are kind of supported and opposed this bill. We in the last break we talked about the alternatives to it. So tell us a little bit about the support that you've gotten for this.
Well, when I started this, I really was after either doing severance tax or federal mineral royalties, because we have a stream of that money that flows into our permanent mineral trust fund and some other areas, K-12 education a little bit, tiny bit goes to community colleges. And I was trying to reach into that and keep a steady, predictable supply of funding coming to Department of Transportation. And that's their biggest gripe, is that they don't know year to year whether they have some forecast on fuel tax that they'll receive. Every 6 years they're up in the air about what the federal government will do, how much money they'll send back. And remember, every 18 cents of every gallon of gasoline you buy gets sent to D.C. and then gets sent back to us. Wyoming's a receiving state in the fact that we receive more than we send to them. Little known fact, and we really don't want some of the states that lose a couple of percentage points there, send 18 cents and only get 17 back. We don't want them knowing about that, but we really do receive more than we send to them, probably about $1.60 for every dollar we send to them. But our Wyoming Department of Transportation can't plan on that. They never know when the feds are going to change their mind, and federal mineral royalties and a couple other things are pretty good evidence that they can suddenly change their mind, and we're missing money. So so we're always after that steady stream, a predictable stream of funding. Well, it came down to raise the fuel tax here locally. You know, the federal government doesn't have the political will to raise that fuel tax, so fine. We had people like the Contractors Association. It creates a lot of jobs when you have more money to rebuild your highways and to maintain your highways. So we had them on support, of course. We had the Wyoming Taxpayers Association, which analyzes all taxes. That's their mission, is to analyze all taxes, see what's fair, what's not fair, what's regressive, what's not regressive, blah, blah, blah. And they were on great support of this. We had this Stock Growers Association. Now that is made up mostly of most of your ranches. Not every rancher belongs to it, but almost all of them do. And they're in support of it. They see good roads as the health of their membership. It makes it easier to transport their livestock and their grain to market. The two that I can remember being against it was the wheat growers, which in our arid state are kind of a minority. And then we had one other group, it was the farmers something, and I'm sorry, I can't really remember that. But those are the only two that really spoke up against it of all of the industries in our state.
And of course, the Trucking Association, as you mentioned before.
How could I forget them?
Yeah, they supported it because they can just add it on to their fuel surcharge. So, and I actually talked about this a little bit last week. I mean, sometimes when fuel is higher, some of these guys make more money because they're getting higher fuel surcharges. I mean, it kicks in at certain levels. So in this case. We already talked about the idea that we are partially subsidizing other states' fuel taxes in the first place. So it shouldn't have that much of an effect, on the grocery shelf or, whatever else that you're buying that was shipped by a truck. It shouldn't really have that big of an impact. And I think that was part of their decision to support it as well.
Well, their livelihood depends on good roads. And so when the roads are bad, their health goes down of the driver. I mean, he's being beat up. There is studies, and it can show you exact dollar value of a potholed road, a lot of stop and go traffic on the extra maintenance and wear and tear of the equipment, and it translates into dollars. And then if you have a driver that makes it to 60 years old versus getting out at 52 years old because his back is gone, he's been driving these back roads that are beat up in other states, potholed. All that translates into actual dollars. You can put a dollar value on that. And of course you can't, it's hard to put the value on the happiness or the continued productivity of a human being, which is something that's very hard to put a dollar value to, but is very important when you consider the future of your own employment. So when you add all that together, the Wyoming Truckers Association was a great supporter of this. Whether or not it's true it'll stay up 2 or 3 pennies more than it was this time last year, or once the market forces come to play, once the price of crude oil is whatever it is, that'll determine the price of gasoline. We're still below many states in what we charge. We're up to 24 cents a gallon. Where you go to Chicago, you start out at 40 cents, plus then you add local sales tax, then you add the city tax. You're paying 60, 70 cents per gallon in taxes. We're still no higher than any state around us. In fact, we're lower than, I think it's Nebraska at 28 cents and possibly Utah. I don't have those numbers right in front of me.
I think Montana as well. I think they're 27 or 28. And it's interesting, the day that this went into effect, California's went up.
Oh, yes, it did.
39 cents per gallon.
So when you look at that, we're still getting a good deal. Yes, we drive a lot of miles, but, we're trying to keep these long streets in good shape, which is to the benefit of all citizens, including snow plowing, filling potholes, resurfacing, striping, all the safety issues that come into play. And that just takes money.
And this is also more of a fair tax than maybe some other tax forms as well, because it's something you can control. I mean, you're not punished for being successful. I mean, you can drive a more fuel efficient car, or or drive less miles. I mean, there are ways you can kind of control this if you want to minimize your tax burden, as opposed to income taxes or something like that.
Yeah, another point. And that's a very good point. If you consume it, you pay, and that's what that tax is supposed to be. The other thought is that this is a constitutional issue. We actually, by the Constitution, every penny we assess for road tax through the fuel has to be spent on the roads. It can't be taken to subsidize other issues like education or health department or any of these other Medicaid issues. I mean, that's what government does. It does education, health, and infrastructure. That's all government should be doing. And none of this money, if we assess you a penny on your fuel tax, it has to be spent to improve the roads or maintain the roads. It cannot be spent anywhere else. That's a point that people miss, that they think we're assessing it and then we're going to use it somewhere else. No, we can't.
Yeah, and that was one of the very first things I heard about this, and everybody's calling in saying it's going to be like Social Security, but this isn't the federal government. I mean, you aren't allowed to spend that on anything but roads. Exactly. By the Constitution of the state.
We can't borrow it. We can't. Yeah, and the reality was, with the predictable stream, which is what we're after, something that WYDOT could plan their engineering projects for the future on, they couldn't do it based on thinking that the legislature this year may give us $20 million or may give us $50 million. One year, over a biennium, over a 2-year period, in the budget, we wrote $200 million. So that means the local taxpayer, the Wyoming citizen or the industry, was paying their money to improve their roads while we were still allowing everybody to drive through our state at 14 cents a gallon. So we were basically subsidizing the 85% of the traffic on I-80 because we were using general fund money, which is your taxes, the industry taxes, paid into this pot. We were taking it out of there to keep I-80 in good shape instead of charging, the person using the road, which is not a resident of the state of Wyoming and has nothing to do with us, 85% of them. We weren't charging them. We were subsidizing them.
So I mean, since the toll thing didn't work, this is the next best answer.
I believe so. The toll idea is not even allowed anymore in the federal law.
Right. So this is the only option, basically.
Right. We could toll I-80. We could toll any road, but the fact is that the federal government put $1 in that road. You had to pay them back before you could toll it. So if you look at the price of I-80, they built it. They send many millions every year to maintain it. We'd have to pay 50 years of I-80's existence back to them before we could actually toll I-80.
Oh, so the only other option, the fuel tax was the best, and And the phrase I used, I think, last week was least worst option. I mean, nobody likes taxes going up, but this was a way to do it that's at least fair.
Well, as I said, it's a consumption tax. If you use the roads, then you pay. Gasoline tax in itself for the future is not a reliable source of money because cars are getting more efficient, and we don't even know how to tax electric cars, and they still abuse the road just like a regular car does, but we don't know how to tax them yet.
Yeah, and percentage. I mean, that seems to be a non-starter. A percentage of the price.
Right.
That seems to be a non-starter as well. So, looks like we might have a call. Let's go to the phones. News Talk 1270 KIML. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. I got one quick question here, maybe two. Is why didn't we use the lottery for this tax instead of our fuel tax? I mean, I noticed that the lottery or the Powerball or whatever you want to call it was passed before the fuel tax was passed before the lottery. Why didn't we use the lottery? I mean, to me, the lottery is going to be spent in a fuelish way. Let's put it that way. I'll take my answer off the air, but I just kind of wondering why don't we use the Powerball instead?
That's a great question.
You're cutting into my pocket here.
I understand, sir. The Powerball was brought up. The reality of the Powerball is that we're hoping it'll make $6 or $7 million. We have no guarantee it'll make even that. We're hoping it'll break even minimally, but that it'll make a few $1 million. We were looking at $135 million a year shortfall for our roads. So to have $6 or $7 million, it's barely putting a dent in anybody's pocket. It would build about 2 miles of road. It would resurface, it'd resurface probably 6 miles. That's it in a year. So the Powerball just isn't here to make money. It was at the request of my constituents in particular, quite a few of them, to have the Powerball instead of them driving to South Dakota, driving to Montana, or the Cheyenne people driving south into Colorado to buy a ticket, which was losing us a lot of state revenue from your gas stations that weren't selling you fuel that because you went to Colorado, you might as well fuel up there, or a can of pop or whatever. So the convenience stores wanted us to sell the Powerball tickets here. It is not to raise funds. I mean, hopefully it'll raise $6 or $7 million, but it wouldn't take care of the roads. That's why it wasn't considered.
So it just wasn't enough, and probably not. And you know, kind of a general idea how much you're going to make because you can look at other states and kind of gauge. You can scale that to the size of Wyoming and know how much they make.
And North Dakota was one of our examples because they're similar.
Yeah.
And they make a lot more than 7. I forgot their numbers. But they also allow the instant pull tab winner thing.
Oh, yeah.
All sorts of other games. And that's why they make more money. When you boil down their overall gambling to just the lottery aspect, it was more like $6 or $7 million. And so that's what we based our figures on.
Yeah, and actually, I didn't know if you'd be able to talk about that, but that's one of the other things I wanted to talk about with the lottery. I mean, is there any talk of? I know it's kind of early, but it's just going to be numbers games right now. There's no talk of video lottery or anything like that at this point.
Not. We have parimutuel betting videos, and we actually legalized. Historical parimutuel horse racing, which
that is actually one of the most interesting things I've ever seen because I like to play horse races, but I saw a description of this, and basically what it is you make a bet, you just bet numbers, you don't know anything about the race that you're going to watch, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
Otherwise you'd know who won.
No, see, they swear up and down. I wasn't in the committee, but I listened to the argument on the floor. And they swore up and down that they would actually show the race, wouldn't name the horses in it, and wouldn't name the jockeys in it. But you would be betting on the 5th race at Belmont, and they wouldn't give the dates. I think that was how they kept you from just Googling it.
Right.
And then you had X time to put a bet down. So
it basically works out like a numbers game.
I think they didn't give the horse's name. They gave his winning record or his losing record.
Right.
They showed you what his record was, and they showed you what the jockey, without naming him, what his record of all the horses in that race, but no names. But I think you knew it was Belmont or, it just seems like you knew. And then you bet on it. I was not really in favor of that one.
but I guess a computer picks the next race, and because Maryland has what they call video horse racing, which is just animated computer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's basically just a lottery game. I mean, you just pick 1, 3, and 5 or something.
No, this one is absolutely a
real
race
horse race
that was run, and then when all the bets are in, it goes off, and you watch a true horse race.
See, I might actually try that myself. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's different, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we might have a call here. The caller's been on hold for a minute, but we'll give it a shot. We only have about a minute before the top of the hour break. So, News Talk 1270 KIML, you're on the air.
We could do to raise taxes. We just go ahead and make marijuana legal, tax the heck out of it, and then all the potato chips, soda pops, and Twinkies that they're going to be buying. This is going to help all the people who live in the mini marts there.
Well, I mean, that's what Colorado did. I think they go at 30% tax on it or something like that.
Oh, Colorado was. We'll watch Colorado and Washington State. Let's see what they do. Let's see how they get by this stuff. The idea that it's still illegal nationally. How they get by being intoxicated or flunking a random or whatever urine test at work, and then screaming that it's legal. So Saturday I could have been smoking dope, and on Monday I happened to be one of the random polls, and I flunked the urine test. What? Let them work those issues out, and we'll look at it.
Once they figure out the hard part, you can join in later.
Exactly.
We'll try one more call. News Talk 1270 KIML, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'd like to get back to the gasoline tax here.
Sure. Just make it quick, please.
Okay, well, we're talking about, we had to spend this money, we had to have this money on a shortfall. Well, the question I have is the $30 million that come out of the DOT that went to a liberal arts building at the University of Laramie. And then we sit around and we watch all this wasted money. We got in right $700,000 that was spent on a tourist information center. I guess I'm just not seeing this shortfall when we're not really watching how we're spending our money.
Okay, thanks for that. I guess about a minute, I guess.
Okay. An answer to that is, government does infrastructure, education, and health. I mean, there is not much more to it. So if we were to say that no money can be spent at the university because we have our roads need work, you're prioritizing one thing over another. I'm not the one that can say, I love our idea of a new engineering building at the University of Wyoming, but since we have a shortfall in the roads, we can't build anything over there. So you take it from Peter to pay Paul in one way or another, and the Visitors Center down and right, economic development, was that a good use of the money? The Business Council was set up to analyze that and decide whether there was a return on that, and they decided to put the money. You can't just focus on having the best roads in the world and nowhere for anybody to drive. And you need an educated populace. And so at what point do you say, we'll provide K-12, and then you go to Colorado, Montana, or some other state? Of course, you won't come back once you get acclimated to living there, and you're near the universities and colleges. What point do you just pick one thing at the detriment of another? And that's the choice of the legislature.
And on that note, we're we're up against the top of the hour break. So I want to thank you, Senator VonFlatern, for coming in. I'm sure we'll schedule another time to get you in a little bit. Hopefully not too long.
All right, thanks, Don.
So thanks a lot.
This.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. We'll be right back.
For the latest on the show, follow Don on Facebook. Just search for Don Carpenter Radio. News Talk 1270 KIML.